Hey everybody, welcome to the TGT Arena Meta Preview. I'm Adwikta, and this is the last episode, if we're calling these episodes. This is the last one we're doing. After this, there is nothing standing between us and actual TGT, and we're all very excited to be playing. So we're going to kick this off. Before we get to the Shaman, Warlock, and Druid, we're going to kick this off with hashtag Arena Warriors Matter because we have huge news. First of all, thank you to everybody who was there with us from the very beginning. Simcopter, Ratsma, Shady Bunny, you guys have been great, and thank you to the Reddit community and everybody else who've been using the hashtag, who have been tweeting it out, who have been making this a thing. Because I still think this is a very important matter. And today, the cavalry has come. Crip made a video, if you guys don't know. I have linked to it at the bottom here in the description. Crip makes a video that basically supports what hashtag Arena Warriors Matter is trying to accomplish. I don't think he uses the hashtag in the actual video, but he does link to us, and he makes all the points that we've made, and he makes additional points on top of that to show just how ridiculous this has gotten. I really like, I'm going to just you should watch the video, but I'm going to highlight one of my favorite points that he made, which I think he makes it much better than I did. He basically puts these two cards up on his screen, looks at the camera, and goes, "Come on, Blizzard. Like, really?" And we had talked before, like, rarity we talked a lot about. One of the big problems that we saw with that sparked hashtag Arena Warriors Matter isn't just that Warriors have bad cards, it's that they actually have good cards that are coming out. They're just given really ridiculous rarities like rares and epics, while the common ones are all really bad. So Crip takes this one step further, and he goes into actual game design from the perspective of card collection, which we just kind of take for granted that it would be better for card collection to go this way, or else why would Blizzard even do this? But apparently even that doesn't make sense. Like, just looking at these two cards, you have one card, Sea Reaver, which Crip doesn't think is very good. We actually think it's pretty good. This is going to be rated pretty high, not as good as a Boulderfist Ogre, but pretty high in our tier list. But the point is, it's an old mechanic, right? Deal 1 damage to all of your minions. That's been there since Classic, and it's way too unstable because it happens when you draw it randomly. So this is never going to be used in a real constructed deck, and this is way too normal of a card for people to really get excited about. And on the other hand, Boaster has the new taunt mechanic. This is one of the new warrior directions in TGT, and you can conceivably think of people getting really excited to make this taunt deck and needing this card, and so they'll maybe buy more packs, maybe spend more dust to try to put this deck together. And Blizzard has kind of said, wow, this weird Sea Reaver card, we're going to make it an epic, and Boaster, we're going to make it a common. I'm with Crip on this. I don't even know what they're thinking here. I thought I knew what they were thinking, and they were just forgetting about the arena, but they're going beyond that. This is actually just a weird game design choice on all angles. But anyway, the idea is the whole point we're doing this is so we're very happy that Crip has come and supported our goals because he has a very huge following and he's a very important voice in the arena community, one of the most important voices in the Hearthstone arena community. So the fact that he feels so strongly about this issue, the same way we do, to actually, and I think he's even harsher on the Warrior than we are in terms of where he thinks the Warrior is going to be once TGT comes out. We both think it's the worst class, and it's going to get worse, but I think he puts it even lower. And that's very good to see, because it means I'm not totally off base on this. And just shedding the light, and just getting Blizzard to do something about this is really the most important thing. And it's all for the future. And I just want to commend Crip for having the balls and being brave enough to really come out and say this, because no other arena streamers or big important voices who have connections with Blizzard have done this, right? It's totally not totally, but like pretty much riskless for us in our position to do something like this, right? We can riot, we can make hashtags, we barely make any money from this, this apartment is not being paid for by Blizzard in any way, right? And on top of that, we don't get perks from Blizzard, right? We don't get card reveals, we don't get invited to things. And so there's really not much that we're risking here. But for Crypt to come out and say this, that's using up a chunk of the political capital and the relationship capital that he's built up with Blizzard. Because as someone who lives their life on gaming, these relationships are very important with the game developers. So I hope that the Hearthstone team really takes this to heart. Crypt isn't just saying this because he feels like it. He's saying this because he really means it. There is something wrong right now with how Blizzard is treating the arena. And as an arena player, this was a very big issue for him as well, and I'm really happy to see this. And I hope that other important voices in the community who play Hearthstone Arena will follow Crypt's lead and really help us shine the light on this injustice. Because I can't believe that people who play so much Arena on a daily basis really come out of this and say like, yeah, Warrior's perfectly fine, or no, there's no issue with like the design process or how rarities are assigned. Warriors were pretty good, and so we wanted to make them a little worse by making their common cards bad and their rare cards and epic cards pretty good. No one can seriously believe that. Anyway, I just wanted to really thank Crypt for this. The cavalry has come, guys. Keep using hashtag Arena Warriors Matter. The struggle is far from over because TGT cards have been revealed, so we need to wait until the next expansion before Blizzard can even take any action on this. And we have been continuously tweeting at Ben Brode, tweeting at Yongwoo, anyone else we can kind of get their hashtags on, try to communicate with them, offering to go on to their streams, offering to have them on our stream or podcast, just trying to get a message, just trying to get them to say something about the arena. And they've been very silent. I mean, kind of understandably, because Brawl is what's coming out right now. But they're talking about Constructed, they're talking about Brawl, they're once again not talking about the arena. So keep using the hashtag, and let's make Blizzard actually acknowledge the issues and get real with us, the players, about the direction of the arena, what they're doing with it, and why these things have been happening. And really to get them to focus on the fact that arena needs a little bit of balancing. We don't ask for much. We really ask for such a small minimum thing as far as riots go, just kind of an acknowledgement and a promise to balance their game. Because that's the state of the arena. We're not even sure that the devs consider arena balancing. We're not even sure that this is a goal that they have. So, hashtag Arena Warriors Matters. Thanks for all the support, guys. And now we're going to move on to our actual class review. We have 3 classes left. It's Shaman, Warlock, and Druid, and I'm going to start off by going back and doing a very quick review of the 6 classes we've done in the good bad format. Rogue better, Hunter better, Priest better, Paladin worse, Warrior worse, Mage better, but it's already the best class, so really how much better is it going to get? And that sounds like a lot of betters and only 2 worse, which means these classes, 2 of them are going to go worse, and 1 of them is going to go better. I think you can guess which one's going to go better and one of the ones that are going to go worse, right? Like Druid obviously better, Warlock obviously worse. Shaman is a class that a lot of people are very high on. And it makes sense. If you look at Shaman, they're 2 common cards and the 3rd one, right? Ancestral Knowledge, I really like the card design. It's for a slower kind of meta, right? You have to spend 2 mana and overload 2 mana to draw your 2 cards. That's even a less good deal than the Arcane Intellect. But if you can afford to lose 2 mana's worth of tempo on the board on a turn, you can kind of squeeze this out a little easier than Arcane Intellect. And in any case, it's flat out card advantage, right? Totem Golem is a very good 2-drop. You get a 3-drop, a very good 3-drop, as a 2-drop. You overload the next turn, so you have to play a 2-drop afterwards. But people look at it as an insanely good card. And then Tuskar Totemic just has a ridiculous amount of value, and people are very high on that card. I'm going to kind of go over, again, why I'm not as high on... I'm as high on Ancestral Knowledge as anyone, but I'm not as high on Totem Golem, and I'm not as high on Tuskar Totemic as other people. So I'm going to start with the Totem Golem. Yes, this is great on turn 2. It kills everything. They die. This lives. Maybe with 2 health, maybe with 1 health. It doesn't matter. This will live and deal 3 more damage to something else. But the question is, what happens on the next turn? You can't look at overload cards in a vacuum, right? So on the next turn, when your opponent is dropping a 3, maybe a spider tank, let's say, you're dropping a 2. And yes, your totem golem is alive, but it's only going to deal 3 damage to whatever's coming out. And any 3-drop will take that hit and then eat your 2-drop the same way your totem golem ate the 2-drop that came before it. And so nothing actually changes. You've just swapped the position of your 3 and 2 drops, which is great. Like, don't get me wrong, this is wonderful. And especially, but with the 3-drop consistency, just to start, you're going to have less of an issue with getting enough 3-drops to play, which is currently kind of an issue. And 2, swapping them doesn't really matter, because it ends up being the same as you trading 2-drops and you trading 3-drops. You have to play the 2-drop, and your opponent doesn't remove it, and then they play the 3-drop, get all the trades in, but you remove the 3-drop immediately with a removal, instead of playing a 2-drop, to really get the value. And now you think, well, what kind of removals do Shaman have? Nothing that kills a 3-drop. They don't have anything that deals 3 or 4 damage. That deals 3 or 4 damage without overloading. Sorry, they don't have anything that deals 4 damage or that deals damage twice. Right? I'm thinking of a Harvest Golem. I'm thinking of Scarlet Crusader, Ogre Brute. I'm thinking of the good 3-drops. Silent Knight. They don't have anything like that, so they can't remove that 3-drop efficiently. So they're just going to play a 2-drop, or they're going to play off curve and use something like a Rockbiter weapon. Either way, when you kind of like map out the early turns in the arena, this card isn't going to cause a huge swing. It's still a totem, it's still good. In the late game, it still has more tempo than a normal 2-mana card would. So it's definitely a good card, but it's not as great as people are making it out to be. And I think we're going to start it off lower than other people are going to be comfortable with. And Tuskar Totemic, I already talked about this. I kind of made a mistake in how I talked about it the last time I talked about it. I was comparing it to a Yeti, and I said it wasn't a good card. So I'm still sticking by it. It's significantly less good than a Yeti. The totem is not only random, but most of the time it's going to be a O something. And that's not very helpful, because even if it would otherwise be useful, even if it's like a Flame Tongue totem, which is great, your opponent's going to kill it the next turn with what he has on the board. But later on in the game, it has very good value. But later on in the game, do you really want a 3 mana play? You want 3 mana plays to be drops. This is not a very good 3-drop. It's at best an okay 3-drop. So the Shaman is not going to get a huge amount of curve consistency. The Totem Golem is good for the curve, but that's it. It got 1 card, and the card is going to be rated somewhere in the 60s. So it got 1 good card that's a good curve. It got 1 3-drop curve that's an okay card when played on curve. And it got Ancestral Knowledge, which, you know where Arcane Intellect is rated. It's once again in the low 60s. So we got a bunch of these cards that are all pretty good, but they're not quite premium cards, right? You don't think of Fen Creeper as a premium card. You don't think of Mech Warper as a premium card. They're just good cards, and that's what these cards are. They're just good cards. So the card quality of Shaman is not all that it's kind of hyped up to be. But what about the totems? We have these totem synergies now, right? I'm going to just skip Healing Wave. But we have this Dry Knight totem card where gain +1/+1 for each friendly totem. That sounds really good, especially when it's a 4/4 base, which is very good. If you just have 1 totem on the board, this will be a 5/5 for 4 mana, right? Worst comes to worst, it's a 5/5 for 4 mana, for 6 mana with a totem, which again is not that bad. All very true. But generally, you're not going to have a lot of totems on the board coming into your turn, because if your opponent has anything on their board, they're going to be removing your totems. So it's kind of an iffy proposition that you'll have a totem to play on curve. Later on in the game, you may have a couple totems. It may get some value. It's definitely a good card, but again, we're getting to the point where this is not a game-changing card. It's just kind of good. And the Shaman is not in need. It's not in want of kind of good cards. It has a lot of good cards. What it also has is 1 real premium card, right, in Fire Elemental. 1 more real premium card in Hex. Like, these are cards that nothing even touches. No other cards in other classes touches their function. Fire Elemental is, I think, the best class common card, and will remain the best class common card. And they're going to get diluted. They're going to get diluted down, and it's going to impact the Shaman more seriously than diluting Flamestrike impacts the Mage. I'm not going to go down the path of why Flamestrike is not the best card ever, but there's a reason in our tier list we barely rated it 80, right? We have it, I think, like 82, maybe 84, I don't remember. But it's not at a 94, which is what Fire Elemental's at. And so with that dilution and with the addition of good but not great cards, you're going to see the overall value of the Shaman go down. And Shaman, of course, also has a lot of other much better cards, like a Stormforge Axe, like a Rockbiter weapon, all like very good for tempo. Fireguard Destroyer, which has more card advantage and more tempo than these cards do. The one card that could potentially be very good is Thunderbluff Valiant. And its problem is that unlike a Flame Tongue Totem, like it looks like it's very good. Give your totems +2 attack, might as well read this is a Flame Tongue Totem, if you can get the Inspire to trigger. But a Flame Tongue Totem is much less mana. This is 7 mana to get a trigger on that turn. And you could just drop it. A 3/6 is perfectly fine for 5 mana, which is why it's a good card. But its effect, while it can affect totems, and while in the late game it can be a totally game-swinging card, it's still not quite a Flame Tongue Totem. It's not at that level of goodness. Like the Draenei Totem Carver, I mean, it's better than a Draenei Totem Carver, but kind of like that, its power is really going to come in the late game when you have a lot of totems. But how do you even get a lot of totems in the late game? You can only get a lot of totems in the late game if your opponent is either weirdly not removing your totems. They will remove totems. Because there's a taunt totem, even aggro decks remove totems. Or your opponent doesn't have the board. You have the board. And this will just kind of win more. Because if you are the Shaman and you have the board and you're going to get up on card advantage, this is not... You don't really need these cards. You're most likely going to win anyway. So what the Thunderblow Veiling does is it secures your win. Otherwise, it's a fairly normally valued card, but it can really secure a victory. So that's good, but again, not game-changing. Shamans are pretty good in the late game. Late game generally favors Shaman because of all the totems that they can tap, and if your opponent goes 1 for 1 for you, like he drops something, you drop something, he maybe kills a totem, you remove his thing, this continues for a bit. If you ever get the upper hand with just 1 extra minion, or you get a taunt minion or something, then your totems start sticking on the board. But it has to at least be an even board for your totems to really stick. And one thing to note about the Shaman is it's very good against Mage. And it's good against Mage because its totems can't be pinged except for one of them. So, and one of them actually heals everything else. So your mage, the mage can't even ping and then wait for the next turn to kill something with 2 health. That is going to work in the Shaman's favor, but it still has to get itself set up. And it didn't get any help in terms of getting itself set up. The Tuskar Totemic and the Totem Golem are kind of red herrings, I think. And the Shaman's already pretty good. I don't know where you guys think the Shaman is, but on average, the Shaman right now is the 5th best class by win rate for most players. So it's not like this is one of the bad classes and it's adding good cards that's going to get good. The Shaman has always gotten good cards. It got a Flame Guard Destroyer in BRM, and that lifted it a bit. So it's already doing quite well, and I don't think it's going to get better. I think if anything, it's going to get a little worse. Let's... Oh, we're not even done with the Shaman cards yet. Charged Hammer, we talked about it before. It's going to be like... it's going to be hell to actually get rid of all 4 of your charges. And for 4 mana, not terribly worth it. And then also the Elemental Destruction. Oh, we haven't talked about Elemental Destruction. I take that back. We're going to talk about Elemental Destruction. It is the best card ever. Maybe not like a Muster for Battle best card ever. But this is not a Flame Strike. This is way, way, way better than a Flame Strike. And it's way, way, way better than a Flame Strike for one reason and one reason only, which is that on the turn you play it, you can also set up your board. And once you set up your board, you have initiative. And then it matters a lot less that you're 5 mana down the next turn. And Shaman has a lot of overcards too. So even if you're 5 mana down the next turn, in a pinch, if you have the cards, you can still get your mana and then kind of be down just like 2 mana the turn after that. And then kind of spread everything out and even out the downside of this card. You never play it on turn 3. Unless you're facing the most aggro deck and you need it to survive, or else you take too much face damage to live. What you do is you play this card on turn 10 or on turn 9, and then you play a board with it. The whole problem with Flame Strike, I guess I am going to go over why Flame Strike is bad, is you Flame Strike, you can't do anything, and then your opponent sets up again. You basically have to Flame Strike your opponent out of cards, which is much tougher to do than Elemental Destruction, where you can actually Elemental Destruction your opponent out of a board, in addition to out of cards. Plus, it's 1 more damage. potentially. So Elemental Destruction, very good. Warlock. I don't think anyone looks at the Warlock and says, oh, this is a class that's going to get better. It's kind of aggro focused, right? It has a lot of good 1-drops. And if we're saying that, and it has the style of aggro that doesn't convert well. You look at how Warlocks play, and it's kind of the opposite of Hunters. They're both thought of as these aggro classes, but as a Hunter, what you do is you throw things down on the board, but you're not very good at it. Like, until now, you didn't even have a 2-drop. Until GVG, you didn't even have a 2 anything, right? At least GVG gave Glaivezuka. You don't really have a 1-drop. You have a Web Spinner, but that's a 1/1. Doesn't do much without a Glaivezuka, without a Direwolf or something to follow it up with, right? So what it's going to do is the Hunter is going to try to struggle to get the board. But then if it gets the board, it needs one good turn and it swings for the face and it has all this reach and it's over. The Warlock is in the exact opposite situation. It has very little reach. It has a Soulfire for 4 damage of reach. It has a Power Overwhelming kind of for 4 damage of reach. And it has pretty much nothing after that. So what the Warlock does is it gets on the board really early with all these 1-drops. And then it starts tapping in the late game so that it can continue to flood the board with these minions, so that it continuously have card advantage, so that the Warlock eventually takes over the board and just incidentally deals enough damage to you to win the game. The Warlock wins by getting on the board and then actually getting card advantage to go into the late game to win. The problem with that in a slow meta is now your opponents are much better equipped to deal with your late game. They're going to have these big minions that you can't clear, and so you'll want to go face. But if you go face and then they clear your board with like a board clear or something like that, you leave yourself very vulnerable to just not being able to come back at all. And that's not a very good thing for the warrior to be doing, for the Warlock to be doing. The one upside here is that it does have Wrathguard, which is not a great 2-drop, but it is a 2-drop. And the Warlock up to this point has had no 2-drops. They don't even have like a sort of 2-drop like a Glaivezuka or a Fiery War Axe. They had nothing. They had a bunch of 1s, so they still have a better like 1-drop plus 2-drop ratio than those other classes. But this is going to be really helpful. Even though it's not a good card, it's going to be very helpful in the arena. And then you see the Fearsome Doomguard, which is a great card. 6/8, wonderful stat distribution, right? But that's kind of the last thing the Warlock needs. If you have, the Warlock already has more big demons than you kind of know what to do with in the arena. Every time you go to the arena, you get these Floating Watchers, you get these Dread Infernos, and you're like, come on, Void Caller, come on, Void Caller. What's going to happen with the Void Caller? Less consistency, right? Minus 25% consistency, I think it is. But what's going to happen with big, giant demons? More consistency, because you got this Fearsome Doomguard that's really good, and it's a common. So why can't you just play all these cards on curve, right? If these cards are good by themselves, why can't you just play a 7 as a 7-drop, a 6 as a 6-drop, a 5 as a 5-drop, or maybe as a 7-drop by playing the Floating Watcher and tapping? Why can't you do that? Well, because as the Warlock, your hero power is it's really powerful, but it's only really powerful if you use it. And you're not going to use it as much if you have all these big things that you're just going to drop, because you're not going to run out of cards if you keep playing big things. If you play a card with already very good card advantage, the Warlock's hero power becomes less good. Totally viable way to play, by the way. If your deck is trending big, don't think like, oh, I have to go aggro, I have to throw all these like really good big cards away. You don't have to do that. But it doesn't play to the Warlock's strengths. So it's viable, but it's not good. And that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem for the Warlock in this new meta. Your whole class is kind of designed around this play style where if you optimize that style of play, you're playing right into this new meta. And so Warlock, I think, is going to take a very huge dip down. Not going to be a subtle drop. It's not like, oh, Paladins got worse, or like Warriors got worse, Shamans got worse. Warlock is going to tank. In the same way that I think a class like the next class is going to get insanely good. So we could look we're going to look at some of the rare cards also. Tiny Knight of Evil, more 2-drop consistency, right? It's a rare card, but as we saw with the Warrior analysis, Warrior got 2 rare 2-drops. If you're a class that just doesn't have any 2s, period, even adding rare class cards matters a lot. So Tiny Knight of Evil, it's going to help. And it's going to help significantly in the Warlock's curve. So the Warlock is getting better at doing what you kind of want the Warlock to do, but that doesn't matter because the whole meta is going to shift in a way that makes what you want to do just less good, period. Fist of Jaraxxus. It's not even reach, it's random, and it's a random enemy, so it can hit your opponent's face, it could hit something on the board. And if you're wondering whether the discard mechanic is going to be a thing, it's not going to be a thing. You know how many cards you discard as the Warlock. It's not going to change. It's going to get less, actually, because Soulfire and I guess Succubus and like Doomguard, they're all going to be less frequently seen. So this is an example of this mechanic that they're trying to build in that's actually just going to be really bad. Void Crusher, on the other hand, is usable. Destroy a random minion for each player. If you have stuff on the board, if you can do some trades, you can use it as a hard removal. And yeah, it has a chance to remove Void Crusher, but generally you're going to have small things that you could kind of throw out and hope it kills that instead. So it's definitely a usable card. It's not great, but it's playable. I think some people think it's not playable, and that's not right. And other people may think it's really good, although I haven't seen anyone who actually said it was really good, but it's also not a really good card. I do like that it gives, it makes sure at least that the Warlock doesn't lose the hard removal consistency the way a lot of other classes lost, because it has Siphon Soul, but with Dilution, that's going to go down. Dreadsteed, Dark Bargain. Dark Bargain. Once again, hard removals not going to drop in consistency. Yeah, it's an epic, but it still helps. And this card is so good. Destroy 2 random enemy minions. You're only going to use it when you've found a way to set up the board where your opponent's large minion is going to be one of the ones destroyed. So it should read, destroy one of your opponent's really good minions, and then destroy one other, whatever one he has out. And that's incredible. Discard 2 cards. You're only going to use this kind of in the late game. So good chance you don't really have to discard 2 cards. And even if you do discard 2 cards, well worth it. Well worth it to have this hard removal. And no one's going to play around it. It's an epic card. If you play around epic cards now, 1, you shouldn't, and 2, you really shouldn't after they put more cards in and dilute each individual card. So that's the Warlock. Now we're going to get into the class that is the best, the highest jumper. I don't even think I've even seen an analysis so far that doesn't have the Druid being the highest jumper in the arena in terms of improvement. And I'll start this off by saying the Druid has a very flexible hero power. It's kind of perfectly balanced. You can use it to get life back, you can use it to deal phase damage, you can use it to remove things on the board. It's not the best for any of those things, but it can do anything in a pinch. So it'll never quite be wasted. Even as the mage with such good hero power, it could be kind of wasted, right? Like if you have nothing good to ping, you ping his face and you're like, all right, I dealt 1 damage. But if you're the warrior, if you're the druid, you say, oh hey, I gained 1 armor and I dealt 1 damage. Kind of nice. And the druid also obviously has a lot of big taunts, right? That's what they started with. That was the class design in the very beginning. And you see Blizzard kind of moving away from that design. We haven't gotten a big taunt in the common slot since Classic, basically. But that's fine. They'll still have big taunts, and that'll still be good card advantage for the Druid going forward. And now the Druid is going to have amazing curve. 2 1/1 saplings is like a Argent Squire, but even better because they can deal 2 damage on 1 turn if you really need to. It's worse for something like, I don't know, an Arcane Explosion, right? Or like a Swipe or something. But generally, it's significantly better. And on turn 1, it's almost certainly better. And an Argent Squire has always been, by the stats, an incredibly good card. We've never given it in the tier list its proper due because we've never figured out a way to use it to that kind of amazing effect that the stats suggest. But it has consistently performed very well statistically in Hearth Arena. So I have very high hopes for Living Roots, especially because if you do top deck it or something later on, it's not the worst card. You still get to deal 2 damage instead of having your 1/1s get eaten up, which 1-drops are very susceptible to. And Druid of the Saber, obviously incredible card. I don't need to go on about it. But this adds to the already... Druid was already the deck, the class that curved out the best. And so now it's going to like super curve out the best in every way possible. No class is even going to touch it. Which is wonderful for arena consistency. And I like that for the Druid. In my mind, Druid has always been the most consistent class in the arena. Every time I played Druid, I'm pretty confident at 7 wins. But I'm pretty iffy that I'll get 10 wins. Lots of 7 to 9 games. Druid has always been one of my top 3 classes. And that's not because it ever does particularly well, it just never does poorly. It's very consistent in that kind of 8-win range. And this is going to help. Part of that consistency is that you always curve out, and you don't have to reach for any kind of like 2-drops. So, and if you think about how the Druid card designs generally come, it's a choose one mechanic, it's a lot of like general spell-y removals, it's minion focused, it's very arena friendly. So unless Blizzard starts doing weird things like with Poison Seeds, right? If they just do normal things to fit into the current Druid sphere in the arena, the Druid is just going to get better every single expansion that comes out. And I think that's it for the commons. Oh no, that's not it. Wild Walker. This is a great card. I think people may be sleeping on this card a little in the arena, but compare it. First of all, Druids right now have just as many beasts as Hunters. Like Hunters have maybe 5% more beasts, like more chances to see a beast. But with Wild Walker, you essentially get a more stable version of a Houndmaster that has a little less upside. You have 3 health instead of +2/+2 with a taunt, but it's not 3. But the body itself is not 3 health, and that 1 extra health matters so much. And you can just play it, because sometimes you do have to play empty Houndmaster just for tempo, right? It's turn 4, you have nothing else to do. There's an empty board. You're like, all right, having a 4/3 on the board is worth more than holding this card for comboing and just tapping. Druid can go both ways. Having a 4/4 is even better for tempo than just tapping, but Druid taps also do things, whereas Hunter's taps don't do much in the very early game, on turn 4. So this is a very good card. We rate it very highly. Daenerys Aspirin, we've talked about, more 2-drop consistency, more greatness, Savage Combatant, mini Fire Elemental, that continues to be a 3 damage effect, just incredible card. Knight of the Wild is the new one. More beast synergies, right? Beast Druid is going to be a thing. This is not like the discard thing for Warlock. This is not like the taunt thing for Warriors. You will have a good amount of beasts, and you will have cards like the Wild Walker. Whoops. Okay, pretend you see the Wild Walker. You will have cards like the Wild Walker. You will have cards like the Knight of the Wild in your deck. You will still have Druid of the Fang, which we're raising, by the way, because there's more beasts and there's more synergies with beasts. You will have these cards, and they will get triggered, and you will get value from them. So Knight of the Wild is not a great card. You kind of have to summon a beast with this in your hand, and then it reduces it by 1. You need to do that twice in order for it to get extra value than what you would expect. So this is not, the Arena Druid is not that beast-centric that it'll make this card actually a great card. But it's a pickable card. It's not a god-awful card. And with Druid of the Fang moving up to being an acceptable card, because you can almost certainly get value with it now. And in addition to that, right, like the Druid of the Saber, I need to point out, it stealths, and it is a beast. So now you have this in addition to the Panther and the Tiger as stealth beasts that you can play on one turn and then buff it or get the buff the turn after that. Makes a huge difference. And even more than that, right? Like this is already a ton of value. You have this new, much improved beast synergy. Everything's kind of going the Druid way. All their cards are very arena friendly. Their Inspire mechanic is a very good hero power. And then you get this card, which is kind of unplayable, but it's an epic and no one really cares. And you get Mulch. Oh my god, Mulch. Almost as good as a Hex. Obviously not as good as a Hex. But for 3 mana, you get to hard remove anything off the board. Yeah, you don't get to silence it. It's, you know, it's not a Hex. But it adds a random minion to your opponent's hand, right? You may think of it like a sap. You kill it, your opponent gets the card back. But it is not a sap at all, because your opponent gets a random minion, which is probably crap. But more importantly, it's not that one minion that you really needed to remove. If you use it in the late game on a big target, it's such huge card advantage regardless, and good tempo. And if you use it in the early game, so what? You've removed a threat on the board. Who cares if your opponent gets like an on the average like 3.5 mana's worth card? I really like this card, and it helps the Druid, who otherwise normally doesn't have any kind of hard removal. So it got recycle last time, it's getting mulch this time. They're just adding so that it's not just naturalize, or you have to like actually deal the damage for the Druid. And I like that, and I also like the fact that they're all kind of on the rare side. So it's not so much class convergence as it is not diluting what the Druid already has in terms of hard removal. So that's it, guys. That is the entire review of everything that is important in the arena. If you've watched all of our videos so far, first of all, thank you. This is like a total of something like 6-7 hours worth of videos. So thanks for sticking with me. But you will know everything that's going to happen to TGT. And we may be wrong. These are just predictions. We'll know in about 2 days, maybe 3 days, depending on when I release this video. We will know for sure what's going to happen. And we're very excited about TGT. I was not very excited about TGT in the beginning. I'll be totally honest. The Inspire mechanic was a good, like, thinking kind of a mechanic. The jousting mechanic was and still is horrible. And it just didn't seem like there were all that many big, impactful cards in the arena. But what I'm just really excited about is to see the arena meta change. I've had kind of enough of the GVG arena meta. It was fun at first, but then it kind of got to the point where it was a little excessive, and BRM helped a bit, and I really like the BRM meta, but I do want to see the change happen, and bringing it back to being a little slower, I think is good. It's good for good players. It's going to be more fun in a thinking kind of way, and I'm ready to kind of play more control cards, control decks than we have before. As a little preview to what's going to happen, Blizzard is going to, whenever Blizzard releases their the actual Grand Tournament expansion, we will have the tier list and Hearth Arena ready on that day before they release it, unless the release is a surprise, in which case we'll have it ready like within hours of their release, because everything's already in the system. Done all the math. We know exactly how many beasts each class is expected to have. We know how many taunts the warrior is expected to have. We know how the drops in each of the classes are going to change based on our current valuations, and we could just tease you a bit with a couple of the scores if we wanted to here and there. So it's all come together already for us. Everything's ready. No worries about service disruption for Hearth Arena. And on top of that, I guess I'll announce it here, but we'll really announce it in a bigger way later. Hearth Arena, we've teased about it before, but it is getting an automated overlay in connection with Overwolf, who we work with, and it's ready. It works fine. We're just not ready to release it quite yet until we get we were sure we get TGT down, right? We don't want, if we totally screw up the algorithm and TGT comes out, we don't want that to be everyone's first impression of Hearth Arena's algorithm. So we're doing this cautiously, but it's all ready. So you guys should be hyped about that. That's going to happen hopefully end of the month, if not fairly early in September, I think. So a lot of big things are coming to the arena game, and we're all very excited about all of this. And you guys are going to love Hearth Arena, just even the base algorithm. We've done so many improvements to it that it's kind of ridiculous. And it's not just the hero power stuff. Although now we did add a hero power system that is the most sophisticated, no, not true, the second most sophisticated system now in terms of just how complex it is. And it's because every new thing we do is more complicated than things we've done previously. So I know you guys see the synergies a lot, but that's probably one of our least sophisticated systems. Not because we don't like it, but just because there's only so much you can do with synergies. And that's why they're so easy to present to people, right? The weird stuff about like, how do you calculate how many times you use a hero power, or how cards affect that, or how decks are archetyped, or, you know, that's too hard to tell you easily. But there a lot of things are going on there, and we've tweaked a lot of this stuff, especially with the archetypes, and we made it definitely better. So we're very excited about that. It's going to cost us a little bit of more money to do this on the server space, but we think it's worth it just for the improvement. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to go on anymore. I hope you guys have liked the series. I will probably be doing a review. I don't know if it's going to be in video form. I may do it in written form here on out, but we're going to write a review and see, kind of fact check us, right? Like, see how good our predictions were. And that's going to be fun, but we're not going to do that for like a week or two until the meta settles a little. Here's what to expect when the actual TGT comes out on Monday. Craziness. Expect a really soft meta, and expect control to look so unbelievably good that you forget aggro ever existed. And then expect aggro to start coming back. Not to the point that it used to be, but the first few weeks of almost any kind of big change with the soft meta makes control better, because you give your opponents more chances to misplay. So definitely give this control stuff, give the inspire stuff, give all this stuff a shot. Build your decks, make it fun. Meta's going to be soft. We're all going to enjoy it for a little bit, and I'll see you guys on Sunday for the Arena Coup and the Lightforge taping, and then I will also be streaming on both Monday and Tuesday whenever I get off work, because I'll be playing the new expansion. So I might as well stream it. So if you guys want to check me out on Twitch and you haven't already, it's twitch.tv/Adwicta. Link is at the bottom. This went a little long, but saying goodbye to you guys. There will not be another video like this for a little bit. Thank you guys for staying with me here, and we'll see how right I am about all of this. Goodbye.